Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Our guests today are author Melissa Joseph and lecturer, performer, Darwin scholar Richard Milner. Author Melissa Joseph was raised in the South. She started volunteering at the hospice and hospitals when she moved to San Diego. And I suppose the fact that you teach literature and writing got you this book, Moments with Baxter.
I always felt like I would be really authenticated as an educator in the writing field if I had a book to substantiate myself.
Oh, that way.
Yeah,
the other way around.
Exactly. So this was a dream to have a book, for sure. I didn't know what it was going to be about, but I did want to write a book.
Where did you teach?
Palomar College.
Oh,
I've taught at community colleges kind of wherever I lived, and I've done that for years on and off.
But nothing like Baxter, right?
Yeah,
different kinds of books.
Different kinds of
or
books.
Ideas.
Different kinds of ideas, exactly.
So introduce us to Baxter.
Well, Baxter is 19 years old.
Wow.
And
he's old, isn't he?
Don't tell. I'm going to cover his ears.
Okay,
He doesn't want to hear that. And he is a miracle dog in a lot of ways. I was given him at age 2, a rescue dog, and he was supposed to be euthanized because he had medical problems. Oh. I kept him and turned him around, and I have a remarkable gifted animal right now. He's part golden retriever.
I was just going to ask you what he is, because he looks like a little
teddy bear.
Teddy bear. His little legs look like teddy bear, but he looks like a little lion cub.
Or a lioness, yeah.
He's beautiful. Well, a cub, even though he's old.
Yeah, he's got a baby face. That's for sure. But he's part golden retriever and part chow.
Oh, the chow makes his legs so
cute. The chow makes his legs full, and the golden retriever makes him all about love.
Okay, so tell us what he really does. What does Baxter, these moments with Baxter, there are so many stories in here. So tell us what he is. You call him a therapy dog.
Baxter psychologically, emotionally, has an ability to take pain levels from an 8 to a 0. You know, hospice patients are 6 weeks or less away from their death at the facility where Baxter works.
Well, just before we do that, let's talk about, you do hospital work and hospice work.
Now just hospice work.
And that is...
And the reason why I would rather stick just to San Diego hospice and hospice work is because Baxter can identify with the patients, and the patients can identify with him. He is at the end of his life, and they too are at the end of his life.
At their life. Oh,
yeah, so it's really an uncanny congruity of life.
So how does he become a therapy dog?
He has to pass a very difficult test.
Is that right?
Very difficult. Less than 20% of the dogs pass this test.
What kind of dogs are dogs who come to be therapy dogs?
Well, gentle, patient, intuitive, sensitive.
Not a certain breed?
No, not a certain breed.
Oh.
I mean, for sure, golden retrievers, Labradors make great companion dogs for people with special needs. But a therapy dog is a little bit different because it's all about comfort and service. If you look at his tag, it says, I'm a therapy dog. My job is to bring comfort
and service. But he can't read that.
He can't read that, but he knows that's his job.
He knows it. And then you put this when you go into the hospital.
He wears this vest.
Could you hold that up just a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah.
He wears this vest. He has his own ID badge.
Oh, he does have his ID
And it
badge.
says Baxter Volunteer, San Diego Hospice, and the Institute for Palliative Medicine.
And how many people are at the hospice?
There's 24 beds there.
And how often does he go?
3 times a week.
Oh, he does. Does he visit everyone?
Well, sometimes he's in bed with a patient for 2 or 3 hours. And we only see one patient. It's not quantity at all.
Oh, it's not.
Yesterday he was with a woman for about 3 hours, and he was just with her and only her.
How can you trust the dog to continue to be so calm?
He passed the test.
I know. What do they do? What do they do?
Oh my God. They try to run over him with an electric wheelchair. They take a cane and beat it all around him. They take huge bowls and throw him on the ground. They bring another dog on the premises and he can have nothing to do with the dog. They bring food, and he's a chow hound. He can't touch the food. Oh. You have to leave your dog with the certification officer, drive off, and see if he has separation anxiety, if he's going to start crying or barking or not responding. I kind of knew that we were on good terms when we drove up, and the certification officer said, "I think this is the cutest dog I've ever seen in my whole life."
But you know, he is an animal, so you have to trust your instincts and his instincts too. But going through that test...
I trust him. Yesterday when we were at hospice, a woman had a 4-month-old baby with her, and she brought her baby right to Baxter's face, stuck the baby's head almost in Baxter's mouth, and Baxter just, licks the baby. Baxter is, I trust him implicitly.
So do the patients have the same kind of feel toward him that you do? I mean, do they caress him? Do they want him in bed? How do they...
They want him in bed with them. They want him right next to them, looking in their face.
Why don't they have their own animals there, then?
They can have their own animals there, but 9 times out of 10, there are certain rules for a patient with a dog. The dog can't bark. The dog can't be aggressive. And so if they have a barking kind of dog that's difficult or that isn't potty trained, they're not welcomed in that facility. They have to have certain rules for dogs.
So how do you know he doesn't bark?
Baxter?
He doesn't bark.
Well, he does bark. Now that he can't walk, he hasn't been able to walk for 6 months. He swims 4 days a week with a therapist. And so I know when he needs something, and he does this very little bark. And he tells me that something needs to be different.
So that doesn't, that complies probably with the rules there.
That is just communication, like the same kind of communication we're doing right now.
This book, how long did it take you to write this book?
About for the whole thing to come to fruition, 2 years. From
2 years?
From beginning to end. Now it's got, it's got endorsements. Now it has some kind of,
Where did the stories
pithiness
come
to it.
from? Where did the stories come from?
The stories came from my fascination and amazement with Baxter's intuitive sensitiveness with patients. I was so flabbergasted at his ability to connect and identify. I would stand by the side of the bed with my mouth agape thinking, oh my God, look at what this dog is doing.
Did you tell the stories or do they tell the stories?
I tell the story.
You tell the stories.
It's about the magic Baxter brings to people's lives, family and friends at the end of their life.
And who took the photographs?
My husband took all the photographs except for the cover, and a professional took the cover photo.
But he went to the hospice with you and to the hospital rooms?
He went. Oh, he is just as much a volunteer as I am. It's a threesome. We're a team. Baxter, Dennis, and I are a team.
So it's really about volunteerism and really giving to the community.
It is, and the wonderful thing about this book, 100% of the proceeds go back to San Diego Hospice. My husband and I want to put a sound system in each of those 24 rooms where the patient can press a button and get the genre of music they want.
So there is the charity element of it too.
Yes.
And I think that brings up the fact of your sponsors, people who are behind the book. Tell us about that.
Well, the only person behind the book is my bank account right now.
No, I meant
my endorsement, the people who have endorsed the
yes.
book. San Diego Hospice has obviously endorsed the book. The president of Therapy Dogs International, Ursula Kempe, has endorsed the book. The gentleman who wrote Benji, Joe Camp, has endorsed the book.
So that's great. So you have like celebrity and
Caesar Milan endorsed the book. Sarah McLaughlin gave us permission to use the excerpt from Angel. You're in the arms of an angel. May you find some comfort here.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And we do have a centerfold I'd like for everybody to see. And when you ask, what does Baxter actually do? And he did sign his book.
He did sign his book.
But this is pretty much what I would call what Baxter does when he's with patients.
And tell us.
And in this particular situation, my husband and I were back in a corner in the room, and this woman for about an hour communicated with Baxter. She talked to him, and he looked at her just like that, and you would have thought that he was responding with his eyes every time she said something.
So tell us some of the other stories in here.
There's a beautiful story about a woman whose last dying wish was to go see the Harry Potter movie. And so Baxter accompanied her to the movies to go see Harry Potter. And she had a goal and she had a dream, and she was going to live until she did that. All her friends met her at the movie theater, and there was Baxter sitting there with her as she ate her popcorn and watched Harry Potter.
That's so great. And this little boy?
This story, David, a 6-year-old little boy, was in great pain, couldn't have anybody touch him, didn't want to talk to anybody, be with anybody. And the minute we said, would you like to be with Baxter, a smile came upon his face. And he was with Baxter on several occasions until he was no longer here anymore.
The stories are very heartwarming and sad, and yet in a way happy that the dog has brought some happiness.
Bittersweet.
Yeah, bittersweet's a good way to say it. How has it helped you with other people and changed your life?
You know, when people tell me about problems they have in their lives, I look at them and I think to myself, are these really problems? And I know it's all relative, and it's important to look at life that way, but when people really get exasperated over certain things that I have learned are truly not important to
like
life.
Simple things.
Yeah, and I don't want to belittle them. I'm not saying that. And even myself, I have learned that it's very, very important for me to not be histrionic about things that really don't matter. It's very important for me to put all my energy in the areas of life that really count, and that's love and human relationships and saying, I do have to say I'm sorry a lot.
Well, we hear your Southern accent, and that's part of saying you're sorry, right?
I'm sorry I have a Southern accent, too.
Melissa, thank you so much for being
Thank
with us
you so
today.
much, Joan, for having me.
And
Baxter.
And Baxter. He never moved. We'll be right back with Darwin scholar Richard Milner. Hi, welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Performer, author, Darwin expert, Richard Milner was born and raised in New York. He went to Queens College and did graduate studies in anthropology at UCLA and UC Berkeley. Richard, you're not only a research scientist, but when you read your research and go through it, you seem to be looking for song cues. What does that mean?
Yeah, I searched the history of science for song cues. Well,
that's pretty weird, isn't it?
well, it combines the two great loves of my heart, because I love going into the history and finding out about the people that gave us the thoughts that we think today and how it came about. And I also love musical theater. So to me, it's heaven to go in and learn about these fabulous people like Thomas Huxley and Charles Darwin, and then turn it into music. And what you do is you find the moments where a song should be. Mm-hmm. I was in the BMI Music Theater workshop, and that's the training they give you. They give you a play like Death of a Salesman or Come Back Little Sheba or Streetcar Named Desire. Write a song for Willie Loman. Find out where the song should be, because so many of the great musical theater pieces, the Carousel, the South Pacific, and so on, they didn't start as musicals. They were written as books or plays, and then someone had to find out where to put the songs.
That's very interesting because the one group of musicals that you talked about were much more uplifting than the group of scientists you were talking about. So it must be, or the group of dramas you were talking about. So it must be more difficult to find sound cues or song cues with those heavy dramas.
Well,
I mean, that's science too, isn't it?
but that's the art of it. The art of it. Well, I like to make art out of science or history. I'm not really a research scientist. I'm an anthropologist who became a historian of science. And my book, Darwin's Universe, is a collection of great events and people from the history of science. I try to find all these wonderful, eccentric. Yeah.
Has anthropology changed a lot since you studied it?
Oh my God.
I know, isn't that a question?
Well, when I went into anthropology, the reason I went into anthropology is because I had a teacher who was a kind of 19th century person himself. He had this belief that if you studied the human body, the human evolution, languages, culture, mythology, one person could somehow encompass all these diverse fields and be a generalist. And sit back and get insights into what kind of creature we are. But since his day, the field has fragmented and fragmented so that the cultural anthropologists don't talk to the physical anthropologists, don't talk to the linguistics. And even within cultural anthropology, I notice if you take up one of their journals, you'll see, the Black Anthropologist Caucus, the Black Female Anthropologist Caucus, the Black Feminist Female Anthropologist Caucus, and of course the Black Marxist Feminist Female Anthropologist. So everybody is
separate.
So fragmented that it defeats the entire purpose.
It's interesting because when I was talking to Frank Gehry, he built this building at MIT, and he said the scientists on this side never talked to the scientists on that side, or that, and so he made this common ground where they had to pass each other. I don't know if it worked, but that was the idea, just what you're talking about. All right, did you want to be an actor ever?
Well, I always did perform in school plays and summer camp plays, and then while I was a graduate student, I used to do sort of stand-up monologues under my pseudonym in San Francisco.
And how did you get so interested and involved with Darwin? Because that's what you're doing now. You're one-person shows.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, when I was a kid, I was interested in animals. I loved animals. I loved nature. I was a kid with frogs in my pockets, you know. And so was Darwin. And I had a friend. Who was very interested in the same things. We were the only two geeks in the whole school interested in dinosaurs before the dinosaur craze. His name was Stephen Jay Gould. He grew up to be a famous paleontologist and writer, a Harvard professor. He is unfortunately gone from us, but not forgotten. His books are still out there, and I've got a thing about him in my show, a song about him. We loved Gilbert and Sullivan together. We loved the use of the language, and I was commissioned by Michael Shermer of the Skeptic Society to do a song for tribute to Gould while he was alive. And so I chose, my name is John Wellington Wells. I'm a dealer in magic and spells. And I turned it into Stephen Jay Gould is my name, and fossils and shells are my game. Canadian shales and Bahamian snails have brought me a measure of fame. If Darwin is your cup of tea, but you don't have a lot of time free, you don't have to look in his wearisome book. You could learn evolution from me.
That's so great. That's so wonderful. Yeah. And that's what your whole show is about.
Well, my whole show is not Gilbert and Sullivan. Some people have the impression that it is. But a lot of the songs are original, but they're in different styles. For example, you take a song cue. The wonderful Thomas Henry Huxley, who was known as Darwin's bulldog because he went out and fought the battles, fought the bishops.
Before.
Darwin hated controversy. He was very introverted. He stayed home and he worked on his beetles and his barnacles and his plants. And Huxley was very flamboyant. And in fact, I played Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady when I was 16 years old. And when I saw the character of Huxley, the very flamboyant, egotistical, I thought, well, gee, Rex Harrison could play Huxley. Let's have a song for that. When he first read The Origin of Species, he wrote in his memoirs, my first thought on reading Darwin's book was, how extremely stupid not to have thought of that myself. Well, that's a song cue if ever I heard one. Of course, it must be true. Must be so. I should have seen it long ago. 'Twas adaptive radiation that produced the mighty whale. His hands have grown to flippers, and he has a fishy tail. Selections made him streamlined for his liquid habitat. Why didn't I think of that?
Professor Henry Higgins.
There are fossils in the ground, protozoa in the sea. All these unrelated facts made a monkey out of me.
Oh, that's so
Now
great.
I see how species was selectively defined. How could I have been so ruddy blind?
Well, talking about Rex Harrison, you also have been influenced by the songs of Maurice Chevalier and Jimmy
yeah.
Durante.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you
Well,
use
then I
all
got a
these.
show business fantasy. Well, you know,
Yeah,
I
show
had
business.
yeah. Well, you know, I do these historical characters. I do a song about Darwin. He was afraid of being scooped by a younger naturalist, so I wrote a song.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah. I wrote a song called "Let Him Be First." He'll be the most hated and reviled man in all of
because
England.
he knows it all.
Let him be first. There'll be no celebration. Let him be first. There'll be no adulation. Let him inform the human race it came down from the trees, and he can tell the bishops they are kin to chimpanzees. So, but let me
Kin to chimpanzees.
Yeah.
Did you take acting lessons? Have you taken?
No. I just
This
did
is
it.
all your own?
I just did it.
This
yeah.
is all your own inflection and drama and everything.
Yeah. Well,
Darwin
I get
had
the
many
character.
personalities.
Yeah.
And does Richard Milner have a lot of personalities?
Richard Milner does have a lot of personalities. Darwin was really extraordinary in the size of the man's personality. I mean, he was an explorer, he was a naturalist, he was later a philosopher, he was an experimental scientist, he was a father, but he also had these other quirky things. I mean, he was originally went to medical school. As he was a doctor
yeah.
who couldn't stand the sight of blood, left medical school because he threw up.
But
during
that
an
wasn't
operation.
you.
No. then he goes, and his father tells him be a theologian. So he studies for the church. He gets a.
He does.
He was a clergyman. He believed in the creationism, and then he wasn't too sure about that. So he leaves the church. He went on a 5-year voyage of discovery around the world, seasick every single day. So
all these horrible
so
things.
he's a seasick sailor, and he's a doctor who can't stand the sight of
Right.
blood. Not a very promising opening.
In your show,
Yeah.
you use hats to
I
show
do.
the different
I
personalities,
do.
right?
Well, like Maurice Chevalier, for instance, there was a poem that was written around the turn of the century when evolution started percolating into the general culture, and it was about a man who just loved this woman all through the ages. When you were a tadpole and I was a fish,
I know.
and so I tried it in different ways. In fact, I tried it sort of like a barroom song of turn of the century. When you were a tadpole and I was a fish, and the audiences didn't go for it. They didn't like it. And it was
Too dramatic?
Well, I don't know. It just didn't work. So I was married at the time, and my wife said, "Why don't you do it like Maurice Chevalier?"
Oh.
And I said, "Okay." And I got a straw hat, and in the show I used a little straw boater and a cane, and I go, "When you were a tadpole and I was a fish,
Yes, it
in
made
the
it much-
oceans of Cambrian time, then side by side on the ebbing tide, we swam through the ooze and the slime.
But
You
other
winked once at me, and I blinked back at you as we clambered through salt marsh and fen. You good-looking creature, I just had to meet you, 'cause I loved you even then."
I love it. And when you did the show the other night, I said, "Oh, I don't want to disturb you," and you went, "I've done this 1,000 times. I can do this in my sleep." But your songs were performed in Cambridge by a choir.
2 weeks ago in Cambridge, in Boston, there's a wonderful organization there called the North Cambridge Family Opera
I
Company.
thought that was
And
fabulous.
there's a man there named David Bass, who used to be a working scientist on a very high level, chemistry, and he's now devoted his life to using music and choral to take little kids and expose them to science, music, and language all at the same time. And they are so enthusiastic. And there was one kid that wrote me a letter that said, "I would much rather sing your songs than do Dungeons and Dragons."
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was
So,
great.
yeah.
And you also ended up on 60 Minutes. At one time they did a piece.
Well, 60 Minutes did a piece on my first book, but that was many years ago. That wasn't Darwin. That
Well,
was
that was what?
that was about pimps and prostitutes. It was called It was called Black Players: The Secret World of Black Pimps. It's a classic of urban anthropology. If you go online, you'll see it there for $300. I don't get residuals.
Oh, but so Darwin's Universe,
Darwin's
the
Universe.
evolution from A to Z.
Yeah.
Before we leave, tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it wasn't just Darwin. You see, it was a great cultural enterprise to find out who we are and where we came from. So that book is full of flower breeders and ship's captains and dinosaur diggers and gorilla watchers and all the people that contributed to this enterprise. Stories, eccentric characters. It's funny and it's entertaining and it's got almost 400 pictures. Everybody who sees it is going to enjoy that. Can I leave you with a thought about Darwin, because there's so much controversy about him?
Okay,
Yeah.
you tell me, because I was going to ask you if he would ever be replaced, if someone would replace him.
Well, the thing is that the fact of evolution has been undeniably established. How evolution works is still a very contentious question, whether it's natural selection or anything else. But beyond whether his theories are right or wrong, Darwin stands for a number of things that I promote, and I like to promote it to kids too. He stands for keeping your childlike curiosity about nature.
Fabulous.
He stands for collecting assiduously and carefully all the facts and observations that you can muster. And he stands for freedom of inquiry from tradition. And he stands for the quest to find out what kind of creature we are and where we came from.
Oh, Richard Milner, perfect. Thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
And keep emailing jaquinn1@aol.com.
Can I just...
777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. And if you want to hear anything about Richard, just email me and I'll forward it to him.
Can I mention my
you.
website?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Google me. Google Richard Milner Darwin songs. You'll find me.
That's what I mean. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Bye.